Hey guys, Board Now's back with you for another one of his end of year list videos for 2019. So on the last list video I did my top 10 movies of the year, which you can find on the channel. I'll also put a link in the description so you can take a look at that video if you've not seen it. Get involved in the conversation. But on this video I'm going to turn my attention to the small screen and I'm going to pick my top 10 TV shows of the year. Another really good year in television. Some strong returning shows, but also a few really good new shows as well debuting. So there might be at least some surprise in here. And again, I welcome your thoughts, your lists as well of your favourite shows of 2019, as well as if you want to comment on my picks as well. There's many I haven't seen which I've heard great things about, so there are some I have to catch up with. So these are obviously just based on ones I've actually seen and really enjoyed. Just to say, I will have a few more list videos coming up to mark the end of this particular decade. I will be doing my best films of the last 10 years, as well as my favourite television shows of the last 10 years. I'll probably do 20 picks for each category in that case. And later this week I hope to get up my favourite TV episodes of the last year. Now the end of year or the end of decade lists I think may be after Christmas, because I might not have time to squeeze them in before. Certainly have a bit more to think about with those ones. Lot of contenders, but yeah, I think it might be more realistic for me to do that after Christmas in the new year. But anyway, this is my top 10 TV shows of 2019. So I'm going to get into it. As with the film video, I've done some honourable mentions for the years. So my first honourable mention, which didn't make the cut, this might surprise some people, but it's the third season of The Handmaid's Tale. Now, this is a big omission, because in the previous 2 years, The Handmaid's Tale, the first season and then the second season, definitely would have made it onto my top 10 of the year. It would have been quite high, especially the first season. The first season was just exceptional. It really was a game changer when it came out. It made such a cultural impact. And the writing, directing and acting was just such top notch, and it was this really unique, powerful and compromising show that just had such an impact, just developed this cult following. And I couldn't really pick a fault with them. I mean, I think there may have been one episode I wasn't so keen on, but that's like 1 out of 10. And I wouldn't say it was awful, that episode, but in any case, it was one of the highlights of that year. For me personally, beaten only by Twin Peaks: The Return, but it was right up there. 2017 actually was a pretty amazing year for TV. But I'm not here to talk about 2017. I'm just pointing out then, if this was the last 2 years, The Handmaid's Tale would make the list. Because season 2 was very consistent. Again, it was a little bit of a dip, but I wouldn't say it was a massive dip, so it was still really top class TV, top class drama, and one of the standouts of last year. So the fact that season 3 doesn't make the cut, I mean, I guess it's a testament to the other shows that are maybe working in different ways, but it's also saying then it was a step down this year, and a bigger one maybe than the last season. There was still some really high quality stuff. It wasn't a bad season by any means. I mean, I like some of the. There was some good world building again in season 3. It did start to show the resistance to the regime, and some interesting stuff going on with Serena and the commander. And what we got of Emily was good. Um, I think it was just the middle part of the season where it did feel a bit like it was dragging its heels a little bit. The middle, two maybe 3 episodes, just I think dragged the overall quality of the season down a bit. So, and I was satisfied with the finale overall. I know people had very mixed reviews on that finale. For me, overall, I really liked the finale, but yeah, it was a step down this year. It was a good season, but not a great season. But anyway, it only just misses the cut. Handmaid's Tale season 3, season 4, which is due sometime in the future. I'm not sure if it's coming out next year or the year after, but that'll be intriguing because of course June is still in Gilead, and it kind of feels with June they've kind of come to the logical end of her arc on the show as a main character, at least, or at least they're coming towards the end. So you sort of feel like the 4th season has to be the season they conclude her story. I mean, if they went on to a 5th season, I guess they would have to change things around a bit. But season 4 is going to be really interesting. But that's Handmaid's Tale season 3. Just missing out. Another one just missed out, which I just saw last week actually. This really sort of powerful, disturbing, really upsetting BBC drama called Elizabeth is Missing. It was a one-off feature length. It was adapted from a novel, and it deals with the very awkward subject of Alzheimer's. And the Glenda Jackson. That's it. I know I should have jotted that one down. But Glenda Jackson returning to acting after 25 years. This was her first role in 25 years. Former Oscar winner. Has done various things. She went into politics with the Labour Party at one point. So a really big name for the BBC to draw back for this one-off drama. And it does this like neat little thing of mixing like this very upsetting personal human type subject with like basically a whodunit, like a procedure. Well, not a whodunit so much, but basically the Elizabeth of the title is like the Glenda Jackson's best friend's her best friend, who you see her at the start like in the garden with gardening, and then she's convinced throughout the drama then she's gone missing, and she's all frantic and searching for her, and because she suffers from Alzheimer's and is really acting out, people don't really take this seriously, including her own family, who are very concerned about her. So that becomes like the mystery of the plot. She's almost playing like the detective herself, but is her memory reliable when she suffers from this condition? And there's some really sweet scenes with her and her granddaughter, who she gets to help her with the clues and what have you. But at the same time, it flashes back and forth between this and the past, and her growing up with her sister. And it turns out then the Jackson's character's sister went missing as well. and she and so you see sort of similarities between in the present with this disappearance or supposed disappearance. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. It'll be up on BBC iPlayer. I recommend you check it out. But there's two similar sort of things. So we flash back and forth between the past and the present, and that works really well actually. The flashbacks. So amazing performance from Glenda Jackson. Really committed to the role. Really believable, incredible. Some really hard to watch scenes. Very powerful and upsetting. Really nice pacing, and I think it works so well because it balances the two sides. Where on the one hand, it is this very like tough sort of human drama, but at the same time, it's a well crafted sort of like mystery, case as well. So that works. So neither side feels like sort of weaker than the other. It sort of goes nicely hand in hand. It's really well written and acted, so yeah, I recommend checking that out. That's a one-off. Elizabeth is Missing, which I'm sure you can still find on the BBC iPlayer. And another show that just misses out for me from my top 10 of the year. And this was another nice little surprise. And it's called Special. So the first season of Special, which was like a Netflix comedy, which really snuck up on me. I mean, I binged it quite quickly. It's very easy to watch. They're sort of in like half an hour chunks. The episodes, I think, maybe a bit less in some cases. And it's basically you have the main character suffers from cerebral palsy, and they've obviously, or it appears anyway to me, then they've cast an actor who has that in real life, so a real sort of plus that. And he lives at home with his mother, so she's a single mother, so it's partly about their relationship and her, being quite cautious and nervous about his life and always trying to look out for him, and he's kind of is a bit wants to get on with his life. He's fond of his mother, but he's kind of embarrassed by how she sort of shelters him as well, and he goes to work for like this I think it's like, it was a while ago I saw it, but I think it's like an ad agency anyway, he has some sort of office job. It's either like an ad agency or like a magazine or something like that. So it sort of deals with this kind of superficial sort of like organisation and world, and him again starting to feel even more like an outcast, but he strikes up a close bond with this girl who becomes like his kind of best friend at work. So it deals with like the politics of kind of that world, and it's a good insight into how people get sort of nervous, around people with disabilities. And I think what's brilliant about the main character, is he's just this very progressive, really confident, straight shooting sort of guy. But he's also not afraid to make fun of himself. He will make fun of his own like misfortune, and I think that's a good way for you to engage with him, without you feeling awkward. Although it is the sort of like comedy drama, let's call it a dramedy, folks, where I think like the awkward sort of moments of embarrassment are a big part of it, and it works really well. He's really good. I think there's some good supporting cast members. Jessica Hyatt plays his mother, who I really like. I've seen her in quite a few things, sort of in smaller roles. I remember she was in a couple person of interest episode, she also had a small part in Sideways. You see her pop up from time to time over the years. I think she might even have been in a Seinfeld years ago. I'm pretty sure she was as one of George's girlfriend. But she's a great actress. You really sort of sympathise with her as the mother, and at one point she tries to move on. She meets who she thinks is sort of a nice sort of guy. But anyway, I won't spoil it too much. But it was one of those surprises. It's a very funny and charming show, but with some good meaty character moments as well. Some really nicely played sort of black humour. As I said, comedy of embarrassment, and I really enjoyed the relationship between the main character and his friend at work. So I really look forward to more of this. There's going to be another season, hopefully this coming year. That would be great. But that's special season 1. Very close to making my top 10 of the year, and I look forward to season 2. So just wanted to flag up in case you haven't seen it. And my other sort of near miss, if you like, which I think fits into a similar territory as the 3rd season of The Handmaid's Tale, but it's the BBC procedural drama Line of Duty, season 5. Now, this was the weakest season of this so far, and it was very slow starting. I think it picked up over the course of the 6 episodes, and I was satisfied with the finale, but yeah, overall it did drag at times, and it just wasn't as engrossing, as exciting, as fresh as some of the other series. This is one of those shows, it's really raised the bar for like really exciting, thrilling, like procedural crime dramas. It's really changed the game because it's made what can be quite a tedious genre, for me at least, into something really edge of your seat engrossing. You get some really great character depth, some really good like guest stars in it, and I mean you just think of those like interview scenes, in the police station. I mean, they have become something which the show has perfected, just turning something like that into something really tense that plays out over a matter of minutes. And it's the fine little details they sort of pack in, the sort of, how a lot of the scenes will play out and you think it's going one way and then it slips in a key bit of information. So sometimes, like, the interview or like have the carpet swept from under them, and it totally changes the dynamic. So the show overall I would recommend. I won't be put off by the fact that you might not be big into crime or procedurals, because I'm not particularly, but I do think Line of Duty is an exception. But yeah, this season, by its high standards, I think was a below par season overall. I like that they carried on and they finally revealed, H, who H was, the fact that came back around. And I think it did get better as the season went along, but it just didn't have the same level of drama. It didn't have the same suspense or really real big surprises as some of the other seasons. So a below par season for me, probably by the high standards. So that's season 5, series 5 of Line of Duty, which didn't make the cut. So that means I'm going to get on to my top 10 shows of 2019. At number 10, a brand new show from the graphic novel. It's the Umbrella Academy Season 1. So with a fine cast, including Ellen Page on really fine form, Mary J. Blige in there as one of like the sort of assassins. And I mean, I know people who have read the source might feel differently on this. I can't comment too much, but for me, it was really satisfying. I really liked the pacing of it. I thought each character had their own unique sort of traits, and there was some good growth for those characters over the course of the season. Ellen Page was really on top class form. She really brings an extra sort of layer to this sort of show. Some really great musical moments. Music was a big sort of factor in the show, in driving the drama. Um, and you know, I think it's another one where it had a bit of a slow start. It probably didn't get really into high gear till about 2 or 3 episodes in, but I thought it was a really satisfying show. There were some really moving moments, some really funny moments. As I said, the characters were well written. I know some people, I think I remember one person I sort of know online saying that it just felt like cliche and a lot of obvious stuff happened. And I guess it did. I can't argue with that. But there's nothing wrong with cliche if it's done well and effectively. And this did grab me. I thought it was a really engrossing show. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more. But I thought the first season of this was very good. Now, it's always interesting with this sort of show of thinking where it can go from here, because potentially it's the sort of show where it may struggle to build on this first season. There was so much put into the first season. Clearly, they've spent a lot of money. You've got particularly high class cast, really strong production values, some really sort of out there ideas as well. But so far, really impressed. I really liked Umbrella Academy, the first season. And at number 9, I guess not on a too dissimilar note, but I've gone for Star Trek Discovery, the second season from CBS, also Netflix in the UK. And Star Trek Discovery is an interesting one because the first season was quite frustrating. It had a lot of good points, and I certainly thought it started strongly, but the first season, it really lost it in the middle and was very up and down at times. I mean, the time travel plot became a little too confusing, a little too sort of out there. Some of the Klingon stuff was just really boring and dull and didn't really grab me. I mean, Ash is a terrible character, and that plot just ended up being kind of gross. Now, luckily, they managed to cut down on that stuff in season 2. There's even an episode where Ash is actually used quite well, quite effectively. But the reason season 2 of Star Trek Discovery worked so well for me is because it basically returned to the roots of the show, at the same time getting the same sort of getting that balance of also updating it, making it a little bit darker, maybe moving forward with the politics. It's also just a really entertaining, action-packed adventure type shows. You know, there's some good effects in it, some good action scenes. But mostly it's a really good like crew of characters, and I think they drive the drama, and I think that's what I mean by it returning to a Star Trek type show where you get this sense of a family on board this ship and their adventures, their interactions. I mean, I think like any good season two should do, it builds on those characters and their arcs. And it's about their relationships more. You maybe didn't have so much of that in the first season. So I think season two was even better and really got the show going. I thought returning to some nice nods to the original series with the original Captain Pike in there. There's even a flashback to an episode from the original series. Tilly has become one of my favourite like current TV characters. She's just, I mean, her growth in this season. I mean, she was her bubbly, enthusiastic, sort of geeky self, but also she really grew as a character. She really became more knowledgeable and more tougher, and all round just a great character. More great stuff with Saru. Again, there was surprises along the way. There was tension. It was nice to see Michelle Yeoh's character. And there was some iffy stuff with some of the Michael Spock stuff. I mean, some of that was quite heavy-handed, and some of like the Red Angel stuff. It was in danger of becoming a bit too pretentious and cheesy and predictable, but I think they stayed just on the right side, and it was a successful series. I look forward to the third season. So Star Trek Discovery Season 2 is my number 9. Number 8, another one which I think falls into a surprise of the year. And originally this was just supposed to be a one-off season, but I guess because it performed really well, they're going to bring it back, and that is Russian Doll. So season 1, as it turned out, and it's through like Amy Poehler's production company. Sorry, it stars Natasha Lyonne of Orange Is the New Black fame, and Freeway 2, Confessions of a Trick Baby, if you like. And it's basically another twist on the Groundhog Day formula. It's interesting, and you've had the Happy Death Day films, which is kind of like the slasher version of like Groundhog Day, and now you have this, and this is basically the very dark, like satirical, fantastical version of Groundhog Day. So it's a jet black comedy where Leone is at this party, and yeah, it's like her own birthday party. So she's like, she's turning like, I think it's something like 35 or something, or somewhere in the 30s. So I think that's particularly poignant, the fact that she's like celebrating this significant birthday, and that's the day she has to keep reliving. So that's, a clever little touch. And so she keeps dying, but they really make it a fun little premise and really run with it. So, you keep getting these reruns and her learning new details. But they make it really funny, but also turn it into like this tragic sort of drama with her slowly piecing together this and how she can try and reverse it. And Leone is really perfectly cast in the lead role. She's fantastic. She really carries it off. She's really deadpan and very funny and witty, but yeah, you just believe her as like this particular character. She's just very, very engaging. And there's this relationship with like this guy later on who she realizes going through the same thing. But one of the surprises of the year. I thought it was really fantastic. The writing, the style of it, visually they do some interesting things. And Leone, it was one of the roles she was made to sort of play. So great stuff. I'm glad it's coming back. That's Russian Doll, the first season. My number 8. Number 7, a returning show this time, and as it turns out, the final season, Jessica Jones season 3. Now, I'm a big Jessica Jones fan. I think the thing to say about it is it's one of those odd sort of shows where I've basically enjoyed all 3 seasons, including the second one, which is clearly the weakest for many, and I would agree. But even that, once it got going, I did enjoy it. But that was the flawed one in the middle. That was the one which didn't quite work as well. Certainly as the first one, and then the last one as well. But it's one of these odd shows, Jessica Jones, where to up to a certain point I've enjoyed all the seasons, but at the same time each season I feel has flaws, even the first season, which I know people rave about, but it is one of those odd shows, but it works really well. I really like the character, I really like the themes. I'm a big fan of noir films and stuff, so a noir superhero character works really well, and they do a good job in grounding her. And it worked out well, really. I think the fact that they knew season 3 was going to be their last one, Netflix told them ahead of time. I think that gave them good time to prepare a fitting ending. And I think that led to a really, really good third season. I thought it was really strong. It paid off a lot of what came before. I really like what they did with Trish, with her character. Something very different, but they really, brought into focus the changes in her and Jessica, and the fact that Jessica has sort of become more cautious in it and is starting to question her role as a superhero at this stage. I thought we had a really good villain again this season. I really liked that actor, and he was a very cerebral sort of villain. I thought there was some good playful back and forth between him and Jessica. I think again it had some interesting themes to do with the media and the power, and again a lot of shades of grey, really, which I think the series has been about. I think there was a little dip in the middle, like for a couple of episodes, because it got to a point halfway through where it felt like the season had peaked, and my concern was it was just going to go down from there. And it probably had a couple of episodes in the middle where, it sort of felt like it was at least, just sort of slowing down a little bit, and wasn't quite as exciting, but then it did pick up again towards the end. I think the ending was really strong. I was really satisfied with it. Good cast. There was some interesting newer characters introduced, and the finale was really great. I can't really have any complaints with the Jessica Jones finale. I think Christian Ritter. I don't think she's the best actress in the world, but I think it's a bit how some actors are just like born to play like particular roles, and I think Jessica Jones, that part just suited her down to the ground. And it's sort of interesting because when I've seen her in other stuff, she's almost played like the opposite of that character. She's always seems to play the more bubbly sort of character, but yeah, she's really effective as Jessica Jones. So the season finale, which I won't spoil, but I thought was a great way to end the show. Of course, it might still be brought back under the Disney banner with their own streaming service, but if this is the end, I think it's been a pretty good 3 season run, and arguably, in my opinion, people may disagree. They may say the first season, but arguably, season 3 was the best season just because of the way it developed and built on the characters, paid everything off really nicely. So Jessica Jones season 3, my number 7. My number 6, another returning show, Big Little Lies season 2. So we're going to HBO this time. This is another one a bit like Russian Doll, where originally it was only meant to be a mini series. So the first series, a couple of years ago now, it was set based on the novel. So you have like this like mystery of like this murder in a suburban town with all these housewives, and part of the mystery of that first season is you don't even know till the end who's been killed. So it sort of leads up to that. So a lot of it was about the drama involving the characters, and it actually probably worked better because of that. But the first season was really well written, really grueling. It was beautifully directed, some great use of like music and atmosphere, and you've got a high class cast. So there was some concerns on how you were going to build on that this season, but for the most part it really paid off. I think it was definitely a step down from the first season, but I didn't think it was a massive step down. I thought the quality was still there in the writing and the acting. It was a real plus, and we got to see more of Neglata, the Laura Dern character. You got more of her this season, more of her sort of funny relationship with her husband. She was kind of the super entertaining bitch of the show, if you like, this time round. You got a bit more on Bonnie and her sort of fragile relationship with her mother. But of course, in some ways, Meryl Streep, who joined in the cast for season 2, was the highlight. She was brought in, obviously, as the mother of her son, who was killed. He was the guy killed at the end of last season. He was obviously abusing the Nicole Kidman character. But yeah, and I think there was this concern with her character, then they were bringing her in, and then the show would try to make you sympathise with her, or it would try and make you sympathise with her son potentially, who was a horrible piece of work, but it handled it really well. It didn't really go in that direction. It was a brilliant part for Streep. She was really icy and unsettling and manipulative. She was a realistic sort of character, and it became this really fascinating character study and this back and forth between her and the Kidman character throughout the season. And it paid off perfectly at the end, I thought. So again, you had some great writing and direction and acting. It didn't quite reach the highs of season 1, but I still thought it was a compelling second season. And you sort of feel it could be the end now, because it did seem to tie pretty much everything up at the end, and considering the first season was only meant to be a one-off, you sort of feel, yeah, this could be a good way to end. But we'll see about that. But I thought again, it was really well done. So that's Big Little Lies season 2, and we're into my top 5, and I'm returning to Netflix, and it is Glow season 3. And this is one of those, quirky little shows which I think just gets better season upon season. I think, the characters grow over the seasons. I think this season particularly might be its best, I think, because, they've switched to the Las Vegas location. They're now, touring and performing every night at this casino, and you get all the tie-ins. You get the introduction of the Gina Davis character as Sandy, the sort of promoter, the owner of the casino. She's a really great addition to the cast. Interesting character. Davis, as always, is brilliant. But yeah, I think it just adds to it, this sort of change with the girls now on tour. Very different than just doing like a weekly TV shows. It really brings new stuff out. You know, this series didn't shy away from the sort of complexities and stress and the pain which touring and performing night after night can bring. So it really brings you to a crossroads with a lot of the characters. It really changes a lot of characters. We really see the sort of darker and arrogant side of Bash. We see a more human side of Sam. He continues to like open up as a character. So him and Justine, their relationship, their sort of reconnection, but also the complications in that relationship, as with him and Ruth. And they actually handled the stuff with him and Ruth really, really well, because that potentially could have just become like this soap opera type storyline where there was this tension, they're awkward around each other, and it could have just become a standard will they, won't they sort of thing. But they actually found a way around that. They handled it really nicely. And yeah, it didn't come off as cheap or soapy at all. Debbie had a really interesting season. I mean, her as this this businesswoman, and she grew as a character, like balancing her life with her child, with this more active role now as a producer, and we see her really as this outlet, this sort of sounding board for the girls, because she does understand them better than other people, and we see this more sensitive side. But it also, because a big theme of the show is to do with these females balancing this other life with their non-wrestling life. So I think we do get this sense with Debbie, of the struggles of being a businesswoman and having a personal life, but how different that is. And that plays really well with the Gina Davis character, their sort of contrasts as businesswoman. And it was actually refreshing. Then they don't go the obvious route with Gina Davis, her character Sandy, her name is. I think at first it just looks like she's going to be that kind of typical savage, just businesswoman. She's going to be very cutthroat, but actually we do see more of a human side to her. There is another side to her that slowly develops, and I think her and Sandy complement each other really well. But again, it's all about the friendships, the relationships, the complexities. It deals with some quite broad issues, like the issues to do with stereotypes in wrestling and in culture. Like the subplot with Jenny. Um, so really fascinating stuff. I think it may have been the best season of Glow, and there's going to be one more season, which is really exciting. Um, but again, some really great writing, really likable characters, and it makes you think. So yeah, it's one of those shows, Glow. I think episode from episode, it's very very consistent. Without maybe, you would argue maybe it's not going to be one of those really top draw HBO style shows, but there is something to be said for it just being this really likable, very watchable, and consistent show, which arguably has been getting better season upon season. So that's Glow season 3. One of my most enjoyable shows on TV right now, or on the internet, if you like, since it's a Netflix show. But that's season 3, which is my number 5 for the year. So my number 4, Killing Eve season 2. So sort of BBC, I think is it HBO? I can't remember actually the co-producer. I know it's BBC and someone else. It's maybe BBC America. So their international branch. But again, it's another one a bit like Line of Duty. It's the spy sort of genre, but it normally that wouldn't appeal that much. But I think it's just the characters and their chemistry. Obviously, Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer, they're just fantastic together, and they've just taken off as this really, really alternative cult sort of relationship, like this Bonnie and Clyde is set between two women, and that's the thing. It's really diverse. It's really forward thinking. I mean, Villeneuve, Jodie Comer's character, has become this sort of cult icon, this great sort of anti-hero where it's an amazing performance. She won, the Emmy this year, Jodie Comer, and it's well deserved because as Villeneuve, she has to play all these different sides of the character. She obviously takes on these new identities, and she plays each side so convincingly. You see vulnerable sides in this season. You obviously see the typical ruthless side. You see really playful, manipulative sides. And we get the central relationship with the Sandra Oh FBI agent and their contrast. And again, it really builds and builds this season. Again, a lot of tense moments, a lot of exciting character moments, some great black comedy. Again, it was fantastic. I thought it was maybe a bit like Big Little Lies. It wasn't quite the level of the first season, which I thought was exceptional. But I thought it was excellent again. It didn't disappoint me this season. And I look forward to season 3. And I think what they're doing, which is quite clever, is they renewed it for season 3 on the night of its premiere. But they've given, again, another showrunner. So season 2 had a different showrunner. Season 3, again, will have a different showrunner. And I think that just refreshes it every time. But it's a female each time, so I think that's in keeping with the feminist themes of the show. But yeah, it is this refreshing twist on the spy genre, which isn't one of my favourite genres. The music again was fantastic, but it is, yeah, that twisted black humour, those characters, the music, the mood, this sort of surreal sort of style it has, that just makes it very different from those sorts of shows. So Kill and Eve for me, one of the best shows on TV right now, and season 2 was outstanding once again, and it's my number 4 show of the year. So into the top 3, and we come to a mini series, and we're back to HBO again, so a pretty good year for HBO. And this was probably their best show of the year. I think this will be appearing as many people's number 1 show of the year. It is Chernobyl, or Chernobyl, I'm sorry, obviously based on the real life incident, the nuclear tragedy. You've got some really high class production values, a fantastic cast of characters, really well cast. You've got Stellan Skarsgård, Emily Watson, who for a long time has been one of my favourite actresses. You've got Jared Harris, a really fine character actor. So they're the 3 leads. You've also got some pretty fine supporting parts in there. I forget her name though, but the one who was in Wild Rose is in it, and she's really good as well. She has quite a small role. But yeah, Chernobyl, it deals with the fallout, it deals with kind of how the the communist government at the time dealt with it, and how they were very slow to deal with it, and it's very critical of that. It really picks that reaction apart. It deals with just the politics of it, and how this character played by Jared Harris is brought in from the outside, and how he feels very awkward about potentially lying to the public, how he tries to get across just how serious this whole thing is, and how he isn't taken seriously. It's a really human, it really brings across that human side of it, and just what a terrible position that is to put someone. But I think what's great about it is that it was such a tough balancing act as a drama, because obviously there's this pressure to get a lot of the details right. There's this pressure to really do justice to the tragic and the loss of human life, and just what a big event it was in history, and just terrifying. But at the same time, it's very hard to dramatize and make dramatic. You have to get that balance. Sometimes I think this is part of the problem with some Hollywood films, some like true life stories, where sometimes it just feels like this big dramatic thing that just ends up being a bit dry, a bit run of the mill, and it doesn't always leave you with much, to think about. It just feels like, well, okay, we know the history, tell me something I don't know. Because that's sort of drama's role. I mean, you have to represent what happened and take it seriously, but at the same time, it's important to ask further questions, to do different stuff with it, to make it dramatic and engaging, because it has to be that as a piece of cinema, or as this case, a piece of TV drama. It's not just enough to just to say this was a tragedy, this really happened. Take it seriously. It has to work in its own right, and this absolutely did. So it got a good balance. It really got across the politics and the loss of human life, and was really critical of the government at the time, and oh my god, just really shocking, disgusting stuff. Um, yeah, really terrifying, some of it. It goes into really, really good details. So there's an episode where basically, you have like this young soldier who's, only just joining the army, and one of his first role is they have to go around like these towns where there's dogs basically, and they have to basically shoot the dogs because the dogs, are going to be contaminated, sort of thing. And he sort of has to do this, and it's like this young, inexperienced soldier. But I mean, that's an episode where it really doesn't hold back. It's very, very bleak. But I think what they do, which is quite clever, is you get that dramatic stuff. You get really good level of detail to do with the science and to do with the factual stuff. But at the same time, they do make it a really dramatic drama. So they do embrace some genre sort of moments. So it does feel like this big disaster type. So obviously not movie because it's on TV, but it does have that feel, and it does have this kind of over. I don't mean over the top in a bad way, but this really sort of heightened, like sci-fi sort of. It really engages in the science of it, in the kind of, just how crazy and disturbing it was. And I think you have to do that in drama. So across the board, it was really well written, directed, very, very tense. The performances were outstanding, as you would expect with that sort of cast. But my only caveat is I probably wouldn't watch it again. I sort of feel once is enough for me. It was a great drama. I can't really fault it, but it is so grim. I'm not sure I would watch Chernobyl again. But as a one-off event type TV, it was fantastic, and it really did make headlines as well. It is a show which really captured people's imagination. But that's Chernobyl from HBO, the miniseries. It's my number 3. And speaking of miniseries, my number 2 is Unbelievable. Another Netflix show. So Netflix pretty dominant on my list. And I have to say, it's similar to my film list, where the number 1 and number 2 spots were pretty much neck and neck. It was very hard to choose between them. But Unbelievable was another real surprise of the year. I reviewed the whole show on this channel, so you can find those reviews. I might put a link to the playlist in the description, so you can catch up with them. And yeah, really, really strong cast. Toni Collette's in it. You had Marriott. I forget the actress's name. People have to remind me. It escapes. It's something Marriott. But I've not seen her in anything. But she's really great. And you obviously have the book smart actress, Caitlin Denver, who's great in Booksmart and really, really good in this. I mean, she's got a great future. I think she was nominated for Booksmart recently, but she should get nominated for this, I think. So it's partly based on real life events. It's at the start of the drama, the Caitlin Denver character is raped in her apartment, and so she goes she goes to make a statement at the police station, and basically it deals with that whole process where she's made to feel bad by essentially male police officers really questioning and putting pressure on her and not being very sensitive to the victim. So it's sort of ultimately it confuses her, it pressures her into like changing her statement, and it just makes the experience harder, and it's already hard enough. So she kind of ends up being pressured into like saying that she made the whole thing up, then, or she was confused, whatever you want to say, but then the rape didn't happen, and it becomes more convenient for the detective. So they drop the case, but then later on they bring this other case against her for basically making stuff up, which just adds to her worries, adds to the pressure on her. We follow her in her day-to-day life as she deals with the fallout. And at the same time, in another state, there's a similar incident of rape. So these two detectives from different states, actually. So this is sometime later. Marriott Reaver, I'm pretty sure that's the name, Marriott Reaver, who plays the other detective. She's fantastic. But yeah, they both have similar cases involving rape, and that becomes a thing they highlight later on, where they start to realise then the guy is committing these offences in different cities, so it makes it harder for him to be caught. So they decide to work together, and that becomes the plot, them, putting together this evidence. At the same time, it flashes back and forth between Marie's life, the original victim's life, and it slowly brings these two sides together. And the writing is just outstanding. It's got that lightness of touch you need with such a harrowing subject matter, but at the same time it doesn't sugarcoat the politics of it and the gender and the way we make victims feel, and just how tough this experience is. But it really gets across the engagement and the sort of subtlety than the Marriott Reaver and Toni Collette have, and the way they approach these cases very differently and takes them a lot more seriously. But it really deals with some meaty themes. The writing is excellent. The direction is very, very good. There's some really clever little shots. It makes its points very profoundly. It doesn't bash the audience over the head with it. It is very subtle. The pacing is very good. The acting's very good anyway, but the three leads are just outstanding. I think, again, Caitlin Denver, for such a young actress, does an amazing job. She really physically captures Marie's torment and her struggles, all this information hitting her and the pressure. It's a great physical performance from her. And of course, you would expect great work from Toni Collette. Marriott Reaver's really impressive. I think the writing of those two, if you like, central characters, is just great as a partnership, because they're very different people. They have different approaches to the case. But they have this really charming sort of partnership. They essentially want the same thing. They just go about it different ways. But great writing, great chemistry between those two. That they really bounce off each other very convincingly. It's very sort of organic. Some great dialogue in there as well. But I think you're talking about great partnerships on TV. I mean, I was talking about Kill and Eve earlier, and I think these two really fit into that. They really have a great partnership. So really enjoyed it. It's very, very rich, very, very powerful. It tells a profound story. And I think it does offer hope without, making light of things and sugarcoating things. It does offer you hope at the end, and there are good people out there, good police officers. There is a fight for good and good work being done, even though the system often is corrupt or it's unbalanced and things do need to be changed. But it does show you there are good people out there, and it makes some profound, points about how we treat victims and the whole system. And it brought the two sides of the narrative together really well. As I said in my review for the final episode, it could have felt a bit forced. It could have felt like it was tying it up a little too much, but it didn't to me. I thought it did a great job of bringing it together, of bringing it to a natural conclusion without forcing it. So, outstanding writing, great drama. Really good show, really good, like one-off. Again, it's a mini-series, so I think 8 episodes, and the pacing really perfect. It really worked so well as like 8 packed sort of episodes as a mini-series. So yeah, one of the surprises of the year. I look forward to rewatching it. Very close between that and my number 1, which I'll get to in a moment. But before I do, I'm going to run down the list once again. So I'm going to do a rerun of 10 to 2, and then I'll do my number 1. So number 10 was The Umbrella Academy Season 1. Number 9 was Star Trek Discovery Season 2. Number 8, a new show, Russian Doll. Number 7, Jessica Jones Season 3, the final season. Number 6, Big Little Lies Season 2, maybe the final season. And into the top 5 we have Glow Season 3, one more season of that to come. Kill and Eve Season 2 at 4. Into the top 3 we have HBO's Chernobyl. That's a mini-series, that's number 3. And at number 2, another mini-series, which is Unbelievable from Netflix. So my number 1 show of the year, and you've probably guessed it, it's back to Netflix we go, it's back to Hawkins we go. It is, of course, Stranger Things 3. And Stranger Things for me is one of the best shows of the last decade, full stop. And similar to what I was talking about with a couple of the other shows, I think season 3 may be the best season of the whole show. I think there's that argument for it. I think with TV particularly, you sort of feel if the writing is doing its job, then the later seasons should probably be the best seasons, because they should really pay things off that you set up in earlier seasons, and you should really start to see that character growth and the arcs and the changes. And season 3 of Stranger Things did that brilliantly. It introduced some good new characters. I really loved the character of Robin and her interactions with Steve, and how it handled their kind of friendship, potential romance. When he kind of thought she was interested in him. I won't really spoil that, but it handles it so well. She's a great new character, of course. It's Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman's daughter, and she's just so great in it. So deadpan and funny, witty, but very warm at times as well. But again, it did what any great sequel should do, is it expanded on the characters, it expanded on the universe. It had a different feel to other seasons, so it complemented those seasons but did their own thing. So it did feel like classic Stranger Things, but at the same time it did have its own feel. So this time it did feel more like an 80s sort of like monster movie or body horror. You had some really exciting, scrungy moments like that. I mean, at times maybe some of the CGI let it down, but you had some good practical effects as well. It was really scary and suspenseful. It moved the politics forward. I thought the mall setting was really effective, really distinct. It captured like the energy of the mall, but it also sort of critiqued it. It did go into the negative sides and the effects it has on local businesses and stuff, and kind of just the corruption of capitalism, if you like. So I did like the balance there, where it was a very cinematic like location, but it did show the negative sides as well as the good sides. But it was a really well written series. It had all the classic elements of Stranger Things that we know and love. It was very entertaining and heartwarming. Great music once again, great style. The references were all there that we love, but it really built on the characters and their worlds. It could not have been handled any better, I think. It was really edge of your seat, exciting stuff. Lots of great details packed into each episode. And I think it's out of this and the first season for the best season, but I think just because of, again, the arcs of those characters and the way they've really got to this stage and have really changed and done some exciting thing. I think this is maybe the best season, just because it's hard to pay that stuff off. It's harder to do it further down the line. Any series can have a good first season if you like, because if you have like an original idea or you strike upon something, then the momentum can carry you along. But to do it 2 and 3 seasons down the line is really impressive. And I think it sort of shows that maybe the Duffer Brothers have an end game, because they've said then they'll only do like 1 or 2 more seasons. They're saying seasons 4 or 5 will be the end point. So it's good that they have that sort of condensed sort of plan to end it. But yeah, I thought season 3 was the best season yet, and you had surprises in there. There was characters being killed off when you didn't expect it. The whole thing changed. I mean, Susie now being introduced was really fascinating. And the ending in the final episode, or nearly the end, was one of the most moving things I've seen this year on TV. So it was a great way to go out. Potentially we've got a new location now for season 4. So that's going to be interesting, and how they change things up again. But it delivered on all fronts for me. Stranger Things 3, outstanding, all round. And it was a very difficult choice between that and Unbelievable, but I think just the fact that it was the third season and it brings up its own challenges, it's harder to do it, 2 or 3 seasons in, to continue that high standard. And I think they've done it again, the Duffer Brothers. I thought it was outstanding. So Stranger Things 3, my clear choice for number one. But it's been another great year for TV. And I look forward to doing more TV reviews over the next year. 2020 promises some interesting shows as well. But that's my top 10 of 2019. I'm forgetting the year now. In the coming days, I will do a list of my top 10 episodes of the year. And I will have some end of decade lists for both films and TV coming up. But let me know your top 10 TV shows of the year and what you thought of some of my picks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.